The NFL draft is quickly approaching, the combine is underway, and we have names of players with whom the Kansas City Chiefs are meeting again. Like I said in this morning's video about the offensive tackles that they've been meeting with, this does not mean they will draft these players. It does not mean that they will trade up or down in order to land these players, but it does mean that the Kansas City Chiefs have some level of interest in these players. Now, the one thing that I will say before getting into things today in this video, a video about edge players, is this. It seems to be a fairly thin class at offensive tackle. It seems to be a very deep class at defensive line, kind of all across the defensive line. You need a nose tackle, you need a defensive tackle, you need an edge, you need a pass rush specialist, whatever it is you need, it seems you can find it in this draft. It also seems to be shaping up as the combine goes on. I have been more and more surprised to be a deeper wide receiver class than even I was giving it credit for. And I had a top 15 the other day of guys that I think could be within the first 3 rounds. So it would not strike me as preposterous if the Kansas City Chiefs' strategy going into this was to try to land an offensive tackle, as good of an offensive tackle as you can, whether you have to trade up or whatever, in order to get that guy, and then kind of stay pat, if you can, in rounds 2 and 3, because you have a second-round pick, though it is the 31st pick in the second round, and then you have 2 picks in the third round, meaning you could get your offensive tackle in round 1. You can, between the second and third round, in whatever order you want, address defensive tackle, edge, and wide receiver. So the edge players with whom they have met are the players that I will talk about right now. Now, they've met with quite a few defensive tackles. 2 of these players that we're going to talk about right now are listed as edge players. The third one is listed as a defensive lineman, is listed with the defensive tackles on the NFL.com's page, but I think he will likely be a defensive lineman for the Kansas City Chiefs in the fashion of, if he gets drafted to the Kansas City Chiefs, in the fashion of Charles Omenihu, Chris Jones. Sometimes you see George Karlaftis come inside. These guys play both inside and outside on the defensive line. So I think that he would be a bigger edge or a sort of almost smaller defensive tackle. The first name here that I think would, look, I guess I should say this as well. I said I thought the Kansas City Chiefs would go offensive tackle in round 1, and in rounds 2 and 3, spread those picks between edge, defensive tackle, and wide receiver. That said, at 31, I do not expect any of these players to be the pick, but I don't think that it would be all that surprising if they were. Well, surprising maybe. Do I think that if any of these 3 names were picked at 31, would I say, oh, automatically that's a bust? No. I think that any of these guys, if you have the intel on other organizations and where they value them, you're going to want to make your move. I think Princely is a second rounder. I think the other 2 names are likely third rounders. Princely Umanmielen from Mississippi, 6'4", 244 pounds, 33 7/8 inch arms, nearly 34 inch arms on a 6'4" frame, 9 5/8 inch hands. Will eventually be a plus starter. You get that from the NFL.com 6.3 rating. A 4.72 40-yard dash with a 1.62 split. Had a 38-inch vertical leap, a 10'6" broad jump, a 7.33 three-cone drill, and a 4.46 20-yard short shuttle. What is it that NFL.com says about Umanmielen? Finesse edge defender with traits, athleticism, and upside to have his sack production translate to the NFL. Umanmielen is a serious ground gainer with burst, stride, and bend to create shallow edges leading directly to the quarterback's drop space. He's not instinctive and takes predictable pathways to the pocket, but he's simply hard to keep out of the pocket due to his attributes. Sounds a little like George Karlaftis. He lacks play strength and aggression as a run defender. That's not George Karlaftis. He will have trouble setting edges and might not be an early down option early in his career. Uman Mielen is an ascending stand-up edge rusher who might be just scratching the surface of his already threatening rush talent. Now, 6'4", 244. You're not looking at a 270-pound edge player here. You're looking at a guy who is the right height, but a little light. He's got the arms, he's got the speed, and he's got the explosive ability. 38-inch vertical, 10-foot 6-inch broad jump. The NFL lists among his strengths, good size with great length and loads of rush production. Speed and stride create favorable entry angles at the top of the rush, dips below redirect blocks to flatten tight into the pocket, can slap away punches or pivot around with good body turn, closing burst to run down. Basically, all of this is true. From the work that I have done on Uman Mielen, this is a guy that I would not be shocked to see go in the first round. Sometimes things just don't work out the way the draft falls. I don't think he's going to be there in the third. I'll say that outright. I don't think he's going to be there in the third. I disagree a little. Oh, no, I don't. He will eventually be a plus starter. For some reason, I thought that said will eventually be an average starter. But no, I think he will be a plus starter. The second name here, Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. 6.17, good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. That's what makes me think he is likely being interviewed for whether or not he will be there in the third round. 6'4", 254 pounds with a 34-inch arm length and 9 3/4-inch hands. 4.73 40-yard dash, 163 10-yard split, 23 reps on the bench press. So he has essentially the same 40-yard dash and 10-yard split as Uman Mielen here, but I don't think that he is the same type of athlete. From NFL.com, edge rusher with reams. I'm assuming that's supposed to be dreams. No. They are correct. Edge defender with reams of 2024 production to sift through. Okay. I get it. Kennard keeps his long frame clean with well-timed punches and has plus range as a playmaker. He can be slippery when he finds edges in either phase. He is frequently knocked off balance at contact points, though. He will create pressure with his get-off and length alone, but he needs less predictable rush patterns and more hand skill to beat NFL tackles. He fits as a wide 9 technique where he can avoid early contact and create rush momentum. He profiles as a day 2 pick, but the tape creates enough concerns over the lower floor for his projection. The NFL lists among his strengths, long frame, should have room for additional muscle mass, high-end production in his single season in the SEC, delivers well-timed strikes and to keep blockers off his body. One of the notes that I had on him is that it does look like, I said he has active hands. I don't know if he has the best hands. They're active. I don't know how accurate he is, and I don't know how effective he is. It looks to me like he needs to add some strength too. Pairs quick lateral slide with arm rip to knife into B gaps, gains ground and turns the corner using long hop and chop, searches to swat and strip passers when running the hoop, and effort to slip off blocks and pressure the pocket when the play extends. Now, I said that I think any of these guys could end up as first rounders. Kennard, in my opinion, has the most work to do if that were to happen. Remember, all it takes is for one front office to value a player like a first rounder for them to go in the first round. When I look at Kennard, do I see a first rounder, which is to say, do I see someone with tools to be a first rounder, someone with the production to be a first rounder, and someone with the athletic measurables to be a first rounder? I do not. Decent numbers with what he's done: 4.7, 340, 163 split, 23 reps on the bench press. Decent tools: 6'4", 254, 34-inch arms. If someone falls in love with his tape, he could be drafted high. I think he's the most likely guaranteed third rounder on this list. So who's the third name? Come on. My mouse is failing, I think. Darius Alexander. Now, the worst score among them, 6.13, good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. But look at this, 6'4", 305 pounds with 34-inch arms and 10-inch hands. 4.95 40-yard dash at 305 pounds, a 1.7 10-yard split. That's a good 10-yard split for a guy that's 305 pounds. A 31.5-inch vertical, a 9-foot 3-inch broad jump. Those are acceptable numbers. 7.6 3-cone drill, 4.79 20-yard short shuttle. Even participating in those drills becomes a positive when you're talking about a player he's not massive, but he's still 305 pounds, and 28 reps on the bench press. I say I could see him being a first rounder, despite I don't think he's a first rounder. I have to keep saying that because I don't think he's a first rounder, but especially at the back end of the first round, when teams, and this happens all the time, teams identify a defensive lineman that they think can make an impact in their specific scheme. And you can go through the last 10 years, there's probably 10 head scratchers on defensive line in the first round, at least on draft day. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. Interior linemen with the size, length, and physicality for consideration in odd or even fronts. Alexander is capable of destroying blocks, but he needs to do a better job of balancing his force to control the action at the point of attack. He can hold his ground when he's staying low, but the pad level is inconsistent and causes his gap constriction to be hit or miss. Alexander has above average rush acumen. That is a big deal for a 305-pound man. He does a nice job of utilizing his traits and crafting a plan of attack. His best football could be ahead of him, but for now, he projects as an average rotational player or backup. Saying of his strengths, possesses coveted length with 3-down skill set. That rockets people up draft boards. Comes off the ball with good bend and force into first contact. Match that with a 1.72 10-yard split. I think you have things going haywire. You have someone who is checking all sorts of boxes that are necessary to just work their way up draft boards. Batter's blocker with heavy hands and long arms. You remember in this morning's video when I talked about Josh Conerly, saying Josh Conerly kind of never stands out on film. Not necessarily a bad thing for a left tackle, but it's not the most impressive thing either, right? This guy's kind of the opposite. He will jump out. He will jump out on film. I do think that he needs to become more consistent. Is someone like Chris Jones the guy that could teach him how to do that? Capable slide and swim move to force whiffs. Rushes with a game plan to set up his moves and counters. Uses arm extension to generate push and separate with his rush, fairly instinctive rush counters fueled by active hands. All of these things, if they transfer to the NFL level, mean a guy is a starter from day one. So, do I think he is a first-round pick? I don't think so. I think he's a third-round pick based on kind of level of competition, based on some of the things that you would see on tape, based on inconsistency, based on you're really making a leap of faith with whether or not he can do those things in the NFL. So I think Darius Alexander is a third-round pick. Would not shock me to see him in the second round. Would be surprising, but I could understand someone taking him at the tail end of the first round. But ultimately, guys, if you got Josh Conerly in round 1, Princely Umanmielen in round 2, and Darius Alexander in round 3, and then you threw in like a legitimate defensive tackle or a wide receiver, I would be over the moon with that draft. Look, that is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.